All right, we're going to head and do the drafting for the rocker arm. So we're going to go to application and drafting. We are not going to do the master model approach for this one. You can if you want to, but I'm just going to open up the drafting application from the rocker arm model that we just made. We want an A3. You can fill out the title block information. We want to add a base view. Want to scale down our part 1:1 would take up the entire paper. So we could probably get away with a 1:2. But we don't want the top view. What is this front view? And then project from that the top view. And we'll hit OK because a majority of our dimensioning is going to be in just these two views. So first, let's go ahead and process the hidden lines in this top view. Just a couple. Really just worried about the holes. In fact, we need a center line for these holes right here. So we can come up here to 2D center line. And we need to process our hidden lines for this view. Now, what I don't want is to see these rounded edges. So that's what I'm seeing here. I don't want to see that in these views. It's going to add to the confusion. I'd rather just show the views without the rounded edges and be able to specify that this part does indeed have rounded edges. So the way to do that is we're going to click on the bounding box, go to the settings, and before we went to hidden lines, we showed our hidden lines. Now we want to go to the smooth edges, and we do not want to actually show the smooth edges. So I'll go ahead and select that and hit apply. And you see that the edge blends just go away. And now we're looking at the geometry before the edge blends. We'll hit OK and do the same thing for the view below. Smooth edges, do not show smooth edges. I'll hit OK. We're missing a couple things. We got a center line that we're missing across here. I want to adjust this so the left-hand side comes about to the boundary box. But when I do that, the right-hand side goes well beyond the boundary box. And I don't like that. I like my trace lines and my center lines to only go to about the boundary box. So I can go to set extensions individually, and then I can control what each side of the line does. So I'm going to hit apply and see that the boundary lines are, or that the 2D center lines are about at the boundary, and that's good. Also, looks like we need a center line between these two faces here. And this center line is so that we can dimension the intersection here. So again, I want the set extensions individually, because what I want is to bring this intersection in, as well as the one that passes through the origin. Go ahead and hit OK. And now we can start to add in some of our dimensions. So we'll get some of the low-hanging fruit first. So like the diameters and the overall dimensions. We can start with this diameter at the top. From one side of the circle to the other. And again, if we want this to be a diameter, we'll double click on it. We'll come up, we'll select the box to the left. We'll hit the text edit. And then we'll make sure that we come to the symbol, put the diameter in, go ahead and hit close, and then close again. While we are in this view, we can go ahead and dimension some of the other aspects to this. Because it's a hole, we can go ahead and use the hole and thread callout, and we can get a 28mm through hole. Last thing I want to do is get a overall dimension in this view. This is going to be a reference dimension. Again, so these are just to kind of as a double check to make sure that either the part is correct or it's designed correctly. Any types of things that's going to be used as or the reference dimension is going to be used for that aspect. So then we can come down to our front view here and start to dimension some of these. So we know we need to know from the center mark to the center of this hole, 72mm. Same thing from center line to the center line. We need to know from this center hole to our origin. We need the vertical. All right, so now we want to start dimensioning these intersection points here. So we want to be able to dimension from this line to where it would virtually intersect into on this 3D center line right here. But as you can see, it does not actually extend that far. Essentially, we're going to add a line in our drawing so that we can dimension this. And the way that we are going to do this, so we're going to come over here, we're going to click on the boundary box, and we're going to go to Active Sketch View. And then we're going to come up to Sketch. And I'm going to go to Align. Make sure that we are in entire assembly. And then I want to select our line and just come down and make sure that we are tangent to this line right here. That distance is fine. Just want to make sure that we start on the same line and that we continue on through our center line. Then because this line is not actually part of the geometry, I want to make this a reference line. So I'm going to click on it. And then just turn this into a reference line. So now looking at this, it looks exactly like the rest of our reference lines. But I can actually come in here and add in the intersection point. So this is just going to be, I'm going to come here to finish sketch. So it's just going to be as if this line was continued on. So I can add the intersection point that's between those two and the top of that point, which is that 6 millimeters that we had. And I do want to add into this that this is a virtual intersection. I'm going to do that on the right side. The virtual intersection. And I can go ahead and dimension this length. The length from the virtual intersection from the center line here the length of the center, or the length of the intersection point here to the top of our part. And then we need to specify the distance between our center point, our origin, to the top of our part. Oops. We also need to add the diameter here. and our diameter on this inside. And then also the diameter of this hole. And it would also be nice to have a reference point for the height of this part. Choose that intersection point there, and then the top of this. But this is, again, is going to be reference geometry. We need to come in here and give this radii and this radius here. Go to our radial dimensions. We can come in here and say 2x. So we're saying this and this are both 16 radius. And then for here, this is just going to be r, because these are tangent. So the radius is just going to be half of the diameter, or half of the length here. So we can add a note, and we can just say r, and we can select our terminating object to be on this arc. Should be fine right there. And we want it to be pointing to the center, so we don't want it to be like that. And we can just click. And we also need to have a section view here so that we can specify the thickness of this webbing in this outer web. So we can come over here to section view. We want to select the center point will do. And then we can move our section view over to about right there. And there's a lot about this we want to change. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the boundary box here. Go to the settings. And under the section, I want to remove the background. I don't want to show the background. Go ahead and hit apply. And it looks like that should be fine. So we'll hit OK. And then I want to remove this 3D center line. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see this center line either. Everything else there should be all right. I'm going to go ahead and dimension these two components here. Or this is going to be the thickness of the material. And I'm going to go ahead and start organizing a lot of this stuff, a lot of these dimensions. Or we can bring this in closer. And if we come over here to settings, go to section line. Change that 15 to maybe 10. Shorten those arrows a little bit. So it looks like we got everything somewhat organized. So if we have the room, and we want to add either an isometric or trimetric view. Not the 1-to-1 like we have here. 2-to-1 would probably be fine. That's isometric. Trimetric is this view. But if neither of these views really excite us, or maybe the views aren't good at all, we can actually decide our own views. So we go to the Orient View tool. We can orient the view however we want. We do want to be careful with this, so we don't want to put something in here that is too crazy, but we can control how this looks. So maybe something like this, we can hit OK. And then we can put in our part. Now again, remember with this kind of view, we don't want these center lines. And we want this to be shaded. So we'll click on the boundary box, we'll come here to edit, go to the settings, go to shading, and we want fully shaded. And then also on here, we're going to add a note. We want the note to say, note, all fillets and rounds are 2. Put it over underneath the drawing. And then also on here, we'd want to specify the material. So we have material. Well, you can just put that down here. Also add a title block. Add it to the title. Double check to make sure that we have all the dimensions that we need. And then when you're sure that everything is good to go, save this as a PDF and be sure to submit it to the Dropbox on Canvas.